And this morning I'm excited to have some panelists that certainly have a lot to share, and we're going to learn a lot from the bios that I'm looking at. So I'm going to invite to the stage Patience Neanda, Enterprise Transformation Architect for NMBZ. I'm also going to invite Tapelo Ngoni. She's a credit risk analyst from Botswana. Next, I'm going to invite Samuel DeMairo. He is the CEO of Order Group and non-executive director of ZB Financial Holdings, and he's from Zimbabwe. Last but not least, I'm going to invite Nancy Kapaku. She's from Zambia. She's a telecommunications technologist, and she works for the Zambia National Broadcasting Corporation. Please give a round to our panelists as we get into the discussion today. All right, so I'm going to start with Patience. I'm going to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself in more detail, the work that you do, and what brings you to this panel.
Thank you very much, Tafazwa. Good morning, everyone. My name is Patience Nehanda, and I'm an enterprise transformation architect for NMBZ Holdings, or as I also like to call it, coordinator of chaos. So basically, I work with the subsidiary, the bank, under digital transformation, strategy realization, as well as innovation. I also work with our technology services subsidiary, Xplug, assisting clients with their digital transformation strategy, process optimization, and basically how to grow their businesses by leveraging on technology. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Next, I'll ask Tapelo. Please introduce yourself. It's a button on the right. Can we please have help with the sound equipment?
Thank you. My name is Tapelo Ngoni, and I'm a credit risk analyst for a development bank. I'm also a commercial banking I'm a certified commercial banking credit analyst, and I'm also a certified financial modeler for different business. I do business modeling for different businesses, and I also own a nonprofit called Lori Innovator, which basically teaches entrepreneurship to high school students or out of school youth aged 15 to 24, and we have an AI tool that makes it easy for them to, solve different problems within their communities.
All right, thank you for that. Samuel, please. Feel free to introduce.
Thank you. My name is Samuel DeMairo. I'm the Group Chief Executive Officer of Order Holdings, which is a conglomerate operating 18 subsidiary companies in 4 countries, employing over 500 people. I'm also co-founder and shareholder in Chingete's IT Depository Company, Zimbabwe's first central securities depository, to provide custody and settlement services for financial securities. At our peak, our deposits were 10 billion USD, and we've done close to 6 billion USD in transaction processing in the past 10 years. I am also an aviation enthusiast. I'm a pilot for fun. I also do drag racing for fun. I don't drink and smoke, so the crazy things are what keep me sane. Yeah. I'm someone that views myself as an entrepreneur and a trendsetter. I like to make and develop things. I like to solve difficult and challenging problems wherever I go to. And yeah, that's just been in a nutshell. Thank you.
Okay, so the man has handled billions and he has a pilot's license. Okay. Nancy, please go ahead.
Okay, good morning. My name is Nancy Kapaku, and I'm from Zambia. I'm a telecommunications technician by profession. I work for the Zambia National Broadcasting Corporation, and I've been with them since 2011 when I started work as a technician. And mostly I'm into IT, information technology, as well as telecommunications and handling the transmission side of things. And I'm also running an organization called Courageous Trends, where we mentor women in business and entrepreneurship, and also encourage children to go back to school. So we encourage them in their education. And I'm also the vice president for the Zambia United Exchange Alumni Association. Thank you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, those are your panelists. Perhaps maybe a bit of background. The topic of discussion today is technology and entrepreneurship, obviously within the context of US-Africa relations. And I think maybe we'll start on January 20th this year, when President Trump signed Executive Order 14169, which canceled and put on hold US aid worth about 60 billion, which represented 90% of the US foreign aid. Following that, a lot of other European governments have also highlighted that they will be cutting aid significantly to focus on internal priorities. In some cases, as much as 50% in aid. This marks a significant change in the geopolitics of the world, and particularly the realities of Africa. That policy shift has sparked intense debate. Critics argue that reducing foreign aid could destabilize economies that have long depended on it. However, in the opposite corner, we have many African entrepreneurs who see this as a turning point, an opportunity to break free from the shackles of aid and instead leverage innovation and technology to drive sustainable growth. Why do they see it this way? Here are a few facts. This year, Africa is projected to be home of 12 of the world's 20 fastest growing economies. The African Free Continental Free Trade Area represents a combined GDP of 3.4 trillion, with a membership of 55 nations, making it the second largest trading bloc after the World Trade Organization. 60% of Africa's population is under the age of 25, with a median age of 19, as opposed to the US's 35 and China's 39. As a result, this represents one of the world's next largest consumer markets. By 2030, Africans will consume $2.5 trillion a year in services and products. Because of this, we're also seeing China moving their manufacturing to Africa, positioning Africa as the next manufacturing hub. So against this background, with foreign aid shrinking, is this a crisis, or is it Africa's moment to take control of its destination? So let's begin a discussion with a key question. I'm going to start with Nancy, and we'll move through the panelists. This is the question that I have for you. Do you see Africa's future as full of opportunity or full of challenges?
I feel this is actually an opportunity for Africa to thrive, because as Africa, we've got a lot of raw minerals that we're blessed with, minerals that are being used to process different products. And we could actually trade among ourselves as African countries, and also exchange raw materials among ourselves. and see if we can come up with processing plants in order to come up with different innovations. Like, for example, in Zambia, there have been plans of coming up with electric motor vehicles. Instead of using vehicles that use fuel, we could actually come up with electric motor vehicles that use electricity instead. So we could actually come up with factories that are able to manufacture some of these goods like vehicles, and also sell among ourselves as African countries. And with the cutting of foreign aid, it should actually make us to think outside the box, because maybe for a long time we've been too comfortable because we know that there'll be aid coming in. We've had this help that has always been rendered to us as Africa, and it has sort of like made us to relax. We are not able to come up with our own innovations. And when we talk about technology, we now have different like AI, which we could use to come up with different initiatives that could actually help us to come up with these innovations that we are talking about, that could actually help us as Africans to thrive. And this should improve our economy and our resources eventually.
Okay. Sam, what's your take?
Yeah, for me, it's a very big opportunity. I think, you know, the rude awakening had to come at some point. You know, no country, I'm sure everybody in here is well traveled, or at least traveled to some extent. And I'm yet to see a country in the world that does not support, that does not look at its own people first before they look at others, right? So I've always been a firm believer that, you know, if you take money from someone, then you have to sing from their hymn book. No money ever comes without any strings attached, right? And we all know this, you know, even in our different spheres, you'll find that if there's a company and there's someone invests in that company, they have to have a say of what happens in that company, right? And similarly, I think when aid comes, you know, there's no free lunch, so to speak. And I remember when this whole Ukraine situation happened with President Trump, where he says the US has, you know, given 350 billion in military aid, and we now want 500 billion, you know, worth of rare earth minerals, right? So for me, I was like, wow, you know, I didn't see this coming, and I didn't understand the extent of it. So the question is that, okay, is the war being fought out of principle or because there is an interest? And in many instances, whenever money goes somewhere, there's an interest by the person giving that money. So I think it's high time that we wake up as Africans and realize that nobody will develop our continent for us but ourselves, right? It's going to be painful before it gets better. And I think, like everything, it's painful at the start, messy in the middle, but beautiful at the end. So I liked Costa's presentation yesterday, where he talked about, you know, Asia and China were in the same boat. Asia and Africa, sorry, were in the same boat. We're in the same boat with them many years ago. But I think the Asians have managed to emerge out of it through deliberate strategies. And we, you know, it's, you know, aid, in as much as it does good for society, tangibly, it's bad psychologically, right? Because I'm sure all of us know of, you know, spoiled children that were supposed to succeed in life but became an absolute mess. So I think it's the same thing with us as Africa. We've relied on aid too much to the point that it psychologically and mentally damaged us. And I think it getting removed is a good thing, because it's going to cause us to suffer in the short term, but it will make us start asking the right questions to say, what do we need to sustain ourselves, and what do we need to create our own solutions to solve our own problems? So what I think Africa needs more of is more trade than aid, because we have all the ingredients to make our continent succeed. We've got all the materials, we've got the we've got the materials, we've got the markets, we've got the demographic dividend, you know, so, you know, we only have ourselves to blame for not getting out of, you know, these problems that we face as Africans. Thank you.
All right. Tapelo, do you see the glasses half full or half empty?
I think what?
Do you see the glasses half full or half empty? Are you optimistic about the future of Africa?
Yes, I'm very optimistic. I mean, growing up before Africa discovered its minerals and everything, we're community-based solutions. Our parents built schools from nothing. They came together through different farming methods to make our country what it is right now. And we're not getting aid from any of these world-class countries. So I see this as an opportunity for us to go back to those traditional methods of how we're building our communities, to create a very cultured environment for our children and stop this spoiling mentality that we've been getting from these world-class countries. So, and also Africa, we're very fortunate because we have a huge or a large population of the youth who are able to come up with very innovative solutions. And we sit in platforms like this and we're always discussing innovative solutions. We're always connecting with each other. We're always collaborating. So it's high time that we reap something from these meetups that we always do. So I think it's a very good opportunity. It's high time we hold our political leaders accountable for our tax money that we pay. And it's high time that we benefit from our natural resources. And we just, kick them out and do our own thing. Thank you.
Okay, Patience?
So I see it as glass half full and very optimistic, but also optimistic with some realistic lens put in, because there's some fundamentals that need to be put in place for us to be able to turn this into an opportunity. So is it an opportunity? Definitely. It's an opportunity for us to innovate for us, by us, homegrown solutions that have context. A lot of the solutions we get are cut and paste. They're not meant for the African market. They're not meant for the African context. So now we have the opportunity to build solutions for us, by us. But there are also some very important fundamentals that we need to be very aware of. Policy reforms, for example. Do our policies encourage innovation, facilitate environment innovation? Because remember, you're a product of your environment. You could be brilliant, but if the environment doesn't enable you, it's going to be a setback. So policy reforms are very important. Have we put in the right skills? I think everyone has been alluding to the fact that you have to be intentional. Are we intentional about building the right skills? We have the youngest population, I think on average 19 years. So we have a fast growing workforce, but have we put in place the right skills? Are we making sure we're growing the right skills? Our education systems and curriculums are not fit for purpose. They're not future proof. And that also needs to change if we're going to turn this situation into an opportunity. And then raising capital, I think very topical yesterday in the morning, to say, how can we innovate? How can we find new ways of raising capital? You would find that the default is to say, let's get loans, let's get credit. But I think we can see that that's not tenable at the moment. How can we raise capital in innovative ways? And it's also an opportunity for us to grow cross-border trading. So I will cite the source, unlike a gentleman yesterday who said they were not going to cite the source. So Samuel said, I think as we were just discussing this offline as well, to say from aid to trade. So how can we shift now that the aid is gone? How do we shift from aid to trade? How do we leverage on the platforms that are there? I know on the financial services side, we have the Pan-African Payments and Settlement System, which is coming in to make cross-border payments easier. It's probably right now, before such initiatives came, it was probably easier for me to send money to Europe than it is for me to send money to Nigeria. And that is a big impediment of regional trade and regional cooperation. So yes, there is an opportunity, but we must also be very intentional about how we're going to realize this opportunity, by putting in place the right policies, by building the right skills, and by ensuring that we innovate around how we're going to finance these initiatives.
Okay. So I'm going to put you on the spot there for a second, Patience, because you mentioned that we must reimagine the policies, and I'm going to cite the infamous, I guess, panel discussion that you're mentioning, where bankers sat in front of the audience and told them that essentially there is no basis to fund within the traditional banking structure. There is no basis to fund startups. So talking about policy reform and considering that you come from the banking industry, which possibly has some of the most traditional policies inherited from Africa's yesteryear economies, what is the banking system doing to co-opt the traditionally unbanked? Are you leading with the reforms that you're requiring from other players in the space?
Are we doing enough? Maybe not, but we are certainly playing our part. So in terms of financial inclusion, I think for those that have gone through the National Financial Inclusion Strategy that was recently released 2022, you'll find that our financial inclusion has actually grown from 69% to 83%, and that's a huge growth. Though we must acknowledge that this is a partnership between financial services providers as well as mobile money providers, and this is largely driven by fintech. So the partnership between financial services providers and fintech providers has resulted in us being able to provide such a large coverage of access of financial services to people. What I think we need to move towards, or what we need to do more of, is now deepening that access beyond just you hold a mobile money wallet or you hold a bank account, into how else can we provide value to you as a entrepreneur. But we also have to be realistic about the environment that we're working in. We're in a highly informalized market. Right now, we have an estimated $2.5 billion US circulating outside of the banking sector. So a lot of people want to come and say, I want to borrow from the banking sector, and yet their deposits are sitting in the other NMB, not our NMB, the National Mattress Bank. That's where their deposits are sitting, and yet they want to come and access facilities. So if all that money is circulating outside of the formal financial services sector, it means we have a shortage in terms of what we can support entrepreneurs with. But I would say we are doing something in terms of the financial literacy programs that are being done, teaching our entrepreneurs how to manage their business, how to manage their funds, and also providing products that speak to your low income, informal market. Before, banks were just for someone with a pay slip and someone with a registered business, but you can go in and open a bank account with just your ID. So those are ways that we're using to also bring in the informal sector. But I think it has to be everyone working together to make this possible.
All right. So maybe just taking it from there, if entrepreneurs are not established enough to approach the banks, traditionally, the aid that we're talking about, the grants that we're talking about, in the absence, because they usually say when you're starting a business, you get funded by friends, fools, or family. But given the fact that in Africa, there isn't that capital, a lot of people are relying on grants and aid to start up their businesses as some form of venture capital, because they represent a very risky bet for banks. So I know, Tapelo, you're in the credit risk space. And how are you working with small businesses and entrepreneurs in the absence of their traditional funding models to find funding to start up businesses when their businesses are still too small?
Well, I'll say for Botswana is definitely different, and it's always sad to sit in such platforms and hear that startups in different countries don't actually get funding, because in Botswana they do. Our government invests a lot in development finance. Like I said, I'm in development finance. I work for a bank that funds startups, informal sector, existing businesses on whatever business that they want to start, because, you know, our government is trying to pull away from the reliance on diamonds, so they're trying to diversify the economy, because, I mean, the SME probably contributes about 50% to the gross domestic product. So I think right now the only choice that we have as a country to grow our economy is through entrepreneurship, and that is why we have institutions like the one I work for, where we get a subsidy from our government to loan out money, I think up to 50 million bula, to different sectors, whether it's your manufacturing sector, whether it's your property, whether it's your agriculture, whether it's your service sector. We give out money to citizen-owned enterprises. And what our government is trying to do is to put money back into the people, to empower an ordinary Motswana to say, hey, you're a young creative. And right now they're very big on creatives. Like, that's where our risk appetite is, because we're trying to grow our economy in different sectors. So if you're a young creative, you want to start, let's say, you do arts and crafts, right? And you need money, you just, you know, submit your business plans and stuff like that. But we also have like small micro loans for, you know, to lessen the paperwork and costs for us. And mind you, our interest rates are very subsidized compared to your commercial banks. We offer a fixed interest rate of probably 6.75%. Such as your manufacturing and your agriculture, where we offer an interest rate of 3.75%, because with our mandate, we're not a profit-making organization. We want to empower people. We want people to get into entrepreneurship. We want people to start businesses. So I think with Botswana is quite different, and it's always sad. And yesterday I was sitting here, actually don't get funding from bankings, and I was like, I wish people had a government who actually thought for them and believed in their ideas and stuff like that, because we get that in Botswana.
Okay.
Thank you.
So while we're talking about funding, I think another consistent theme throughout the panels has been, in addition to the funding, there is the requirement for the skill, right? Because we're talking about technology and we're talking about entrepreneurship. And a lot of it relies on using platforms that require some level of skill and the basic ability to start and run and operate a business. So, Nancy, I understand you're doing some work with entrepreneurs in Zambia. Is this a challenge? Are Africa's youth equipped and skilled enough to take advantage of the technology as they start their enterprises?
So mostly, the people who I deal with, they have an idea, like they know they want to start up a business, but they don't exactly know how to go about it. So it's probably where they're lacking the knowledge on how to go about setting up a business, how to start, where to get capital from, how to run it, and if they generate any profits, what are they going to invest in? So they are lacking more on the knowledge part. So that's why I ventured more into the mentorship and training, just to guide them on how to go about it. And if you are dealing with people who are illiterate, they are mostly not able to use the gadgets such as smartphones, where they are able to do any kind of research. So you need of guidance, because they are not able to access that information maybe on the internet. It's people who probably have like simple phones that don't even have internet. So you do a lot of research for them and try to explain to them in a language that they are able to understand, so that you are there as their mentor, as they are setting up their businesses and starting, and you are there to guide them on how to exactly go about it. Probably even encourage them to have a mobile banking account where they are able to save small monies. And if they are in short of capital, for us in Zambia, there are some loans. They've gone into partnerships with the mobile services like Airtel, MTN. They offer small loans. So these can be, someone can access, and they're able to use that as the capital to set up small businesses that they are able to generate some income. We're talking of things like baking. Maybe someone can be able to sell fritters and the like, just so that they are able to support their families. So at least there are these digital platforms. You can even access them using USSD. And for those with smartphones, you are able to maybe have the mobile app where you are able to access those services.
Okay. So what's interesting as you speak is you mention a lot, you talk a lot about access to the internet and the challenges that youth are facing in accessing and services. And I think as recent as 2021, only 46% of Africans had access to the internet. And I understand, Sam, earlier this year, you were the first licensed distributor to distribute Starlink in Zimbabwe. And I understand within weeks, it was fully sold out within a 100-kilometer radius of Harare. What is the reality? Are we seeing a shift from that 46% penetration rate? What are the challenges? And should we expect that this would not be a problem in the near future?
Thanks, Steph. I'll, I think, make some important remarks before I get to that specific question around financing. I think if you look at Africa, I think different African countries are facing different challenges and problems, some better than others. Some African countries have forex reserves, some don't. If you look in Zimbabwe, for example, we've been through an economic roller coaster for the past 25 years with, a number of iterations of currencies. So it makes the unique circumstances of each country different. But I think the underlying issue is that we need to develop high growth enterprises, businesses that can employ hundreds or thousands of people, businesses that can be scaled across the continent, businesses that can be scaled globally. That's what we truly need. And it's important for this to happen in every African country. If we're ever going to succeed as a population, we need to be thinking globally. We're not in a global village where if you are not looking out for your interests, nobody else is. If you're not, you're on the table, right? Yeah, if you're not at the table, you're on the table, right? So I think Africa has been on the table for a very long time, and it's time for us to get at the table. And we're not going to get at the table by focusing on small things. We have to focus on large things. I think, Donald Trump basically made public some secrets that we never knew. That wars are not fought for principle, they are fought for economic interest, right? That's issue number one. Issue number two, everybody is looking at how they can trade in a way where they gain an advantage over the other person, right? That's the world, that's the reality of the world we live in. So if we are not thinking along the same lines, we are going to continue being on the table, right? So I think that's a very important aspect that we need to look at. I think coming to this issue, it was actually last year we've been working with Starlink and SpaceX in Africa, not just Zimbabwe only, but we're looking at other markets with them as well. But that's also a problem. You actually look at, I'll tell you something for free. You know, when I went to California for the first time and visited their offices, I was shocked. And I was like, is this the place where all this stuff is happening? And it's not even anything out of this world, to be honest. In my mind, I was like, look, we could build rockets in Africa. You know, it looks like rocket science, but it's not as complicated as people think it is, right? If you take time to invest over time, right? And all of you will understand that sometimes the most shiny looking organizations from the outside are sometimes the most disorganized internally. Way of making things work, right? And they produce something that works. So, you know, thinking of doing, you know, unfortunately, sometimes as Africans, we laugh at each other. I remember in Zimbabwe, we were making jokes when, you know, Zimbabwe launched its first satellite into space, right? It was a small, tiny satellite. Yeah, it's fine. You know, we've never had a satellite in space before, so it's a starting point. You know, if you look at Starlink, they've got 6,000 satellites in orbit, but it just didn't start with 6,000. It started with many failed attempts before they got it right. But the important part is going down the journey. So I think in this day and age, there can be no development without connectivity. I think in the past, computing was important to have. And, you know, we're talking about, you know, a digital revolution. But now, without connectivity, you know, there can be no digital revolution. So we're playing our part in trying to, you know, bridge that gap, making sure that broadband internet is available in underserved communities. Where there is the grid, it's great. Where there is no grid, we're looking at, you know, ways of having off-grid solutions to keep, you know, everybody connected, because it's important that we all move forward. The rising tide lifts all boats. So that's what we're doing. Then I think I'd also like to touch on from a, you know, another hatter ways that I'm a non-executive. I'm non-executive director to Patrick sitting over there. And yesterday he was talking about financial institutions traditionally would not fund startups. And yes, that's true. But I think what we are also doing as a financial institution is we have an innovation function, which Patrick heads within the group, and was trying to stimulate innovation as a bank. We're trying to see how we can, you know, work with universities to stimulate innovation and stimulate, you know, startups and enterprises. Because, you know, every business, no matter how big it is today, it was a startup at some point. And it needs to be a culture. We need to have a constant culture of investing in startups. Much more will fail than will succeed. But those few that succeed, if they become high growth enterprises, you know, the impact will be so great that it will be felt nationally, regionally, and even internationally. Thank you.
Okay, so I think at this stage, if anyone in the audience would like to ask our panelists any questions, please, by raising your hand to ask a question. What I will ask is, please keep your questions short. Keep them questions, not statements. And I'll also ask the panelists to please keep the answers as short and as specific as possible so that we give more people an opportunity to ask questions.
We'll take a whole bunch of questions.
So we'll take 4 questions at a time.
Okay.
And please also, if you're directing the question to any of the panelists, please do say so.
Thank you. The question is directed to Samuel, and it's on the Starlink distribution. If he faced any regulatory challenges and how he solved them. Thank you.
Thank you. The question is directed to Thapelo. What is the success rate of the startups that you are funding?
My question is directed to Patience. I was impressed with the fact that she admitted that we are going to face challenges, but we'll eventually get there. But how do we use existing private partners or private sectors that we have in our respective countries to fund our organization, and which they know that they may not have a benefit immediately, but how do you keep them, how can I say, keep them still within your reach until you get there? Because most of these organizations that we have been funded before, and most of us are not making money out of it right now. So how do we get to the private sector and keep them within our reach so that we remain afloat?
Okay, so if you remember the order the questions were asked, please just answer in that order. Question was directed to Sam, then Tapelo and Patience, I think.
Okay, thank you. I think from a regulatory perspective, I think when it comes to in-country licensing, what Starlink typically does is that there are two types of licenses: internet access provider license and an internet service provider license. So what we have is an internet service provider license. The internet access provider license is something that Starlink would apply for to the regulator directly. But what we observe from a distance is that, obviously, whenever a new technology comes, there's always, paranoia, and, especially in Africa sometimes, well, it's not in Africa, but everywhere in the world, sovereign nations are often paranoid about who has access to their countries and to what extent do they have that access, and to what extent are controls in place that they also have some sort of oversight and control over the process. So it took some time for Starlink to be licensed. We had been engaging with them from as late back as 2021 and constantly used to get that. I think eventually they managed to tick all the regulatory boxes in terms of, the technology being provided and the extent of which, the reality of the matter is that governments who want some sort of control over the process, which I presume they were satisfied with. And I think for us, when we were now providing the last mile service as an internet service provider, it was a fairly simple and straightforward process. Of course, when you are being vetted for that, it's typically thought of as, matters of national security. So you probably go through a lot of security vetting to the point of knowing the names of your cats and dogs and the class your child is at and at which school, you know what I mean? So now, apart from those, security checks and all the like, it was a very simple and straightforward process. And I think once Starlink got their internet access provider license, it paved way for us to service provider license.
We've had many success stories. We've funded hospitals from start. We've funded toilet paper making manufacturing companies, oxygen making companies, and also recently we funded a project that does light bulbs from the start. Now that I think they're exporting their light bulbs to South Africa, and then we've also invested in different businesses that are into cattle breeding, who register to the EU market and export that cattle, the beef products to the EU market. We've also, we've done a lot. I mean, I alone in my department, I manage over 1,000 projects. So you can only imagine how many projects we've funded since the inception. And I'm not going to say it's easy because, when it's government money, it comes with the mentality that it's free money and we cannot pay it back, right? So we've had our struggles with our non-performing loan book where people were not paying our money back. And obviously with a startup, the chances of it succeeding within the first 5 years, it's not easy, right? I mean, we have some projects where we had to put in more money in order for them to be able to succeed. I mean, our mandate is to make businesses work. We had to restructure, give a lot of projects, grace periods, but our mandate is to empower Emotswana. So we do by all means to sustain our operations and also handhold them, mentor them. You know, sometimes we attach different expertise from different business people within the projects that we have funded free of charge. I think we also fly out our promoters who are in the hospitality industry to Germany when they're in conferences for different conferences free of charge, so that they're able to, you know, advertise their businesses. So it hasn't been easy. We handhold them. We try by all means to nurture them and make sure that their businesses do not fail, because in the end, as much as we are not for profit making, we're still trying to get our money back so we could loan it to other citizens. Thank you.
Okay, so I think on the issue of how do we still keep going whilst we're addressing these challenges. So there are three main things that we need to be cognizant of. So for example, on the funding side, we may not have a lot going on in terms of direct funding, but I believe in the power of ecosystems. So for will fund value chain. So you'll get a lot of value chain financing, especially if you look at the agricultural sector. So right from your communal farmer, small scale farmer, they benefit through value chain financing. You finance the aggregator and the person that's then benefiting from all this. And by that, you are indirectly then funding everyone across the value chain. So sometimes financing is not about you getting the cash, but it's about us enabling the person that is at the center of an ecosystem to then provide you with the support that you need to be able to do your operations. So the power of ecosystems, first of all. And then secondly, education. So I think skills has been an issue. So there is financial literacy on one side. But I think as the private sector, we also have a part to play in terms of building the skills whilst the curriculums and so forth are being fixed. So I'll give you a very a real example of ourselves. So we have partners with partnered with universities, but on top of that, as our interns come, for example, on the tech side, I think it was Constantine that said, our universities produce IT managers. Why? It's because when people get interns, all they do is they're carrying around printers and resetting passwords because they're interns. But our interns actually have to, for their internship to be successful, they have to implement an actual project that will go live and be utilized by actual customers. So we are also making sure that interns are not just being turned into managers, but we're equipping them with the right skills that make them ready, whether they want to get into the job market, whether they want to then go on their own. But by the time they finish school and they go back, finish school, they are market ready. They're not all they know. They're not just people that know how to lift printers, change cables, and so forth. They're getting real life job experience. And then lastly, I'm a believer in co-creation. So we may not have the answers as funders or as financial services, but we can co-create with you. Let's have discussions around how we can implement the right sort of structures that will benefit us and that will benefit yourselves. It must be something that's mutually beneficial. But for something to be mutually beneficial, we need to co-create. I think the age where as businesses or as bankers, where we just tell you, this is what you have, take it, that time has passed. We are very open to sitting and having dialogues on how best we can serve you, because that is our raison d'etre. We're here to serve you. But for us to know how to serve you, let's engage, let's discuss.
So I think we're going to allow one more round of questions. I can't see behind the podium the mic. Please just try to distribute the questions across the room.
All right. Thank you so much. My name is Samuel Wadzai, and my question is directed to Nancy. So I think the media has a very important role to play in terms of ensuring that there is a mindset shift regarding how us as Africans view the issue of external funding. What do you think is the role of the media? How can we ensure that the media play a positive role, to support the mindset shift that we need for this process to be inclusive? Yeah.
I'm Kukuletu Ngwenya. My question is directed at Tapelo. Tapelo, I just wanted to find out, you said you are in the business modeling space as well. And from your experience, I wanted to find out what are some of the loopholes you've seen in the business models that are that entrepreneurs are coming up with or startups are coming up with? What are some of the challenges that you've seen? What are some of the loopholes that you've seen? I would be interested to learn the things that not to do and the things that we should be doing for us then to come up with stronger, more sustainable business models.
Thank you so much for an insightful conversation. I have a comment in the question. Comment number one, we over-glorify banks. Banks are not there to babysit us as entrepreneurs, they're there to make money. So the first step as an entrepreneur is bootstrapping. Sacrifice so that we know you are emotionally attached to your business. The moment you walk to a bank and you are looking for money in terms of pre-seed, you are looking for 2,000, they eventually scale it down to 1,000. And when they give you that 1,000, they charge you administrative fees of $150. Already they are giving you $850. You are $100.50 in short. The moment you leave a bank, you are hungry, you buy pizza. So by month end, they want their money and you are in debt. So banks, go to banks when you have a solid business model and you are scaling, not starting. Then my question to Tapelo, how then do you go beyond Botswana in terms of regional integration by coming up with high sub-Saharan Africa? Entrepreneurs are not only in Botswana, they are across sub-Saharan Africa. How then do we fund products and services that can be scaled beyond Botswana? Because Botswana is just one, but a product can be put across sub-Saharan Africa. Then the last question to Sam. Sam, in the Chenketai Depository, the event where people don't come and claim, maybe we have millions of dollars in terms of savings, does the government allow you guys to reinvest that money and make profits and keep it that as principal? Because you can't just watch money. Money must be money.
Thank you.
I think maybe we'll just let them ask, then we'll take another round of questions, because the last question was one comment and two questions.
Okay, I'll start with the question on the media role in ensuring correct information is distributed on the issue of funding. So with the news that came in from the US in terms of funding, I think as the media, we probably contributed to the propaganda that was going around because the information was not correctly distributed by the public. Like in the instance of health, people just took it, this is it, this is a death sentence. Those people who are on ARVs now will not receive anything and people are going to die. So as media, we have a role to play. We need to ensure that the correct information is distributed out there. We need to get our facts right and find out exactly what is the true picture. And in also ensuring that there is a solution in the event that this aid really does stop coming through. What's next? The media should be able to find people who are innovative, people who are just in the event that the aid is really cut off. So why can't we spotlight those people? Why can't we to hear if at all their solutions have been proved and tested and are able to be used by people? So we have a role to play. We need to get the correct information. I think nowadays with the coming in of social media, there are a lot of online media houses that are actually sometimes sharing false information. So probably we rely on the of
Okay, so maybe I'm just going to come in there because of time. I think there were two people that had their. Okay, so maybe if you can ask the question, then as you answer the question, please close with your final comments. Please go ahead.
My question is directed to Samuel. So I think in the beginning of the discussion, we were talking about the whole US aid fiasco and how it has exposed our dependence. But there's also a technological dependence that we have on the West. So in the case of the components that make most of the smartphones that we have here, most of the raw materials are taken here from in Africa and then assembled elsewhere. So my question is, how do we, how can our governments work with the private sector to sort of pick winners and for us to actually start doing deep tech as opposed to just this sort of surface kind of projects? Because in the example that you're giving about Elon Musk, we can most of his businesses have actually also benefited from a lot of these sort of government subsidies, and there's a sense in which the U.S. government and the U.S. military has essentially invested in most, if not all, the technologies that we use that are in the smartphone, through DAPA and other programs. So how do we also sort of replicate the same models in terms of establishing a sort of private sector and government the partnership that picks entrepreneurs that are building technology or that builds technology for our own sort of national security? Thanks.
I think those are all the questions. So please, if you have a question, just answer both questions and close with a comment. Please try and keep it not more than 3 minutes so that everybody has a chance and we can close in time for lunch. Yeah.
All right. I think one of the questions was on the loopholes or most like mistakes that people do. So I think one of the mistakes that people do is people wait till they retire to want to get into entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is very risky, so it's always best advice for you to try venturing into business when you are younger so that you allow yourselves to make mistakes and learn from them. But with most people, they wait until they're 65, get their retirement package, put it all into the business, and when the business fails, they lose it all, get into depression, and it becomes really bad. And I think the other mistake that people do is when you have an idea, you tend to think that this is a brilliant idea and there's a market. People don't do that market research. And like a lot of entrepreneurs, when they get into business, they tend to think, oh, I know a person who can buy my product. They don't have conversations with people to see if people will really buy the products or not. And then another thing is people don't keep records. In order for us to see if you'll be able to pay back our money, if you're getting a loan, we need some sort of financial record. You need to have a credit record so that we know that we'll eventually get our money back, or we are able to predict, your future cash flows, looking at your past historic performance. So keeping your financial records is very, very important for us as analysts in order to assess your credit, in order for us to assess your credit risk. And then I think there was another question on funding beyond market, funding beyond the Botswana market. So market uptake is usually really, really difficult. It's a huge challenge, but I think these days there are accelerator programs that help young entrepreneurs to be able to venture out beyond their own countries. And then I guess in closing, I would just, advise people to, or people who want to get into entrepreneurship to say, startups carry a high credit risk. So you can leverage tools such as Google Trends, Google Analytics, and build your digital platform to make it easier for lenders to be able to, to get information on your credit history or whatsoever, and make it less work and less paperwork and less costs for the bank to be able to give you money. Thank you.
Right, thank you. I've got two questions and I'll give my closing comments. I think as Chengete Zai, we do sit on a lot of unclaimed shares, and that's true. So we're obviously operating in a regulated industry where we're holding, we're custodians. But I think what's been recently introduced is a securities borrowing and lending framework where we actually then can use those financial securities to lend them to stimulate trade. But we cannot do that ourselves because they are not our, because we are their custodians. So, from a governance perspective, we can only introduce securities borrowing and lending, but it's up to the market to then take advantage of the opportunities that come with that to be able to grow that asset base. But in and of itself, we cannot invest depositors' money. It's similar to financial institutions where you cannot take depositors' money for the institution to invest, because it's well and good when things work, but if they don't, it can be a disaster, and the question becomes who pays for it. The shareholders will then have to pay for it, and it's not going to be a nice conversation to be having. So that securities borrowing and lending framework is now there, and I think that will lead to things like margin trading, and so forth and so on going forward. Coming to the issue of tech dependence, I think that's a very pertinent and important point. I think this part of the world, we have a problem where we want to see something that's tried and tested, right? Does that sound familiar? If we see something, where has it worked before? Even that's something that's tried and tested was untried and untested at some point. It started somewhere, right? So that's also a problem that we face. And I think even in our own organizations, wherever we are, in as much as we want predictability, we must also give room for people that are starting and trying. And guess what? The Indians have this mentality that changed my life. You'll find that, people in the Indian community, in any country, they'll create a cartel. People in the white community in any country, they create a cartel. But, you know, people of our own color, we don't create our own cartels. And the truth of the matter is that, you know, a cartel is not a bad word because that's how this world is run. It's run by cartels of some sort, whatever you may want to call them, right? So every industry is always cartelled. And this Indian man, you know, very, you know, aged Indian man, you know, with an airport on his head that can land an Airbus A380. But he told me that, you know, I've got an Indian partner that I work with, and he told me that, you know, this guy, I was his first customer. He was doing computers. I gave him the job before he had proven, you know, any traction in there. He came and he messed it up completely, right? And guess what this man did? He said, I gave him more money to try and fix it. And he kept on pumping money, this guy, until he kept on making mistakes until he got it right. So he wasn't spending money on this young man because, you know, he was good, but he was investing in his future. Because he knew that if I raise this young man, when he's successful, the entire community is going to benefit from it. So in the same vein, in our businesses, we must have that budget, or in our initiatives, we must give people that chance to try things and fail until they succeed. Everything that's working and tried and tested today was untried and untested at some point, and it failed numerous times before it succeeded. You know, even I think when I was looking at the history of SpaceX, I remember there's a time where they were one rocket launch away from bankruptcy, right? But they kept going, and they have people that kept on believing them. And now, all of a sudden, you know, Starlink internet is now the benchmark. These guys are sending rockets to space and back like, you know, it's drinking a cup of tea every week. They're sending rockets, things that had never been done in history before. So it is important from a national level, from an organizational perspective, that we need to give room to people that are starting up, that are trying, and we need to support them. A lot of them will fail along the way, but we must not tire to support, you know, from supporting them, because eventually they'll get it right. In your organization, at some point, try something, you know, use some software that's untried and untested, and work on it and develop it with the person until it gets tried and tested. You know, even in our own institution, we are moving away from, you know, vendor-driven solutions to developing our own solutions. Developing solutions by Africans for Africans, you know, and seeing how we can then expand those solutions across the continent. So we must always have a culture that for us to build and be excellent builders, we have to start somewhere. And then I think in closing, when we are talking about technology and entrepreneurship, we must always remember that we're living in a global village where we need to be globally competitive. Any country that has a trade deficit is basically a sign that there is someone more competitive out there at something than you. I think for a long time, this continent has been a continent where raw materials are extracted and it's a market for finished goods, right? So we need to change that and start increasing our manufacturing capacity more. We need to start making our own things that are globally competitive. And we must always remember, wherever we are competing against the entire world, and our benchmark must be at a global level. And something that is not benchmarked at a global level will eventually die at some point. So as we get into our businesses and enterprises, let's think ahead, let's be globally competitive, and always remember that we must work on becoming the best in the world at whatever we're doing. It doesn't matter that we're in Africa. Trust me, people out there are not significantly smarter than us. They're actually not. And in most cases, us, this part of the world, are more smarter than, I can tell you that the people in this room are smarter than 95% of Americans. I can tell you without effect. I've been to America a couple of times. You people in here are smarter than 95% of the Americans. So the world does not have smarter people than us, but it's up to us to have confidence in ourselves, to realize that, you know, in this global village, where you are located is just like an IP address. You are just located there, but the world is your oyster. So let's go there and conquer the world from within Africa. And we can do that.
I'm going to ask the last two speakers to keep it extremely short. And yeah, because we're out of time. So Nancy, please go ahead, and Patience, you can then close the session.
My closing remarks? Okay. Okay, so technology and entrepreneurship, in the changing world that we're living in, entrepreneurship is now more dependent on technology. We need all the intelligence, like the artificial intelligence. These days, businesses are using digital marketing to get their clients and to advertise their products. And we are more dependent on the different social media platforms that we can reach out to customers, and even for businesses having virtual meetings. So it's now shifting. The world is now more dependent on technology. So businesses now cannot do without technology, and we need technology to thrive as entrepreneurs. That's my closing remark.
Thank you, Nancy. Patient?
I think first of all to just acknowledge the importance of entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship because they basically solve problems for the rest of us, whether it's for social impact, whether it's for profit, whether it's for sustainability. They do play a very important role in solving our problems. In my closing remarks, I just want to just go back to the issue of for us, by us. I know it sounds like a myth or a dream in the sky, but a very practical example is us as NMB. We underwent a digital transformation exercise where we realized we needed to bring in the best technology in order to serve our customers. But we realized that buying technology was not going to work because the context was wrong. The time to market was terrible. By the time you sign all these contracts and so forth, and then it's not meant for your market. So you have to customize it. By the time you're done, it's a whole different product altogether. So we started internally developing our own solutions from our platforms that our customers use to our business process automation tools, robotic process automation, and that culminated in us setting up a fintech. So now, in addition to being a bank, we managed to now set up a fintech that's now serving other financial services providers in Zimbabwe, in Tanzania, in Uganda, in Rwanda, in Mozambique, in Zambia, as well as in South Africa. So for us, by us is very possible because we've seen it at an enterprise level. And I think what we just need to do is to start to take this into a more global level, also keeping in mind that we have to make sure that we adhere to global best practices, so the best of the world, but with our own context in mind. And then secondly, I think technology is important, but I think what's even more important is to know the right technology for you. We always use the example to say a haulage truck is big, it's expensive, but can you buy a haulage truck to drive it to work? No, that's not what it's meant for. So as we are leveraging on technology, choosing technological tools for our businesses, let's make sure that it's right for our context as businesses or as organizations or even as individuals. And it's also right for the people that we serve, our customers and our stakeholders. And then education. I know the issue of skills will continue to be topical, but I think it's very important for us to also educate ourselves on where the world is going, what all these advancements are. A lot of people will say, if they're not within the IT sector, they'll say, I'm not technical. If you can change your phone and upgrade it every time, and no one comes to sit with you and teach you the new functions, as long as you can use a mobile phone, you're technical. When your phone has errors, you clear your own errors. When your phone is active, you know how to work with it. You are technical. But in addition to that, let's equip ourselves with the skills of the future. Let's ensure that we know what's happening in the rest of the world. And then lastly, partnerships are very important. A lot of the problems that we have can be solved by partnerships. We tend to have a propensity to own things, but sometimes access is more important than ownership, and partnerships give you access. Let's look for the right partners that can help us to move our businesses forward.
Thank you very much. A round of applause for our panelists. That concludes our panel today. And I have an announcement. After this, you can collect your lunch vouchers, and we meet here at 1 p.m. So you're free to leave. Thank you.